I kept his letters, poems he wrote me, and
Alright, Nathan Burnett, episode 41. Today we are going to be getting into the trade deadline because obviously this is one of the crazier trade deadlines that we've had in a while. You know, KD leaving, Kyrie leaving, the Nets completely dismantled, Westbrook leaving, and many other moving parts. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. But before we do, once again, a reminder just to you guys that we are about 400 subs away from 500. The last time I checked, we are at 496. So definitely subscribe, like the video, share the video around if you enjoyed it. All that good cliche YouTuber stuff, as it really does help me out. And we are very, very close to a milestone. All that good stuff. And we are just going to go ahead and get into it. And then if we have time at the end, depending on how long this trade deadline stuff goes, then we can maybe talk about all-star stuff and some few minor conversations about stuff that has been going on in the league. But the main portion of this episode is going to be about the trade deadline because of how obviously crazy everything was. So to start off, I think it should be pretty obvious that one of the crazier trades is both the KD trade and the Kyrie trade. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the Kyrie trade. So just like what I did last episode with the LeBron video, I do have something typed up just to sort of keep myself on track with my notes and make sure that I don't forget to say anything. So I'm going to be reading a little bit off of this, but I'm also going to, since it is a podcast episode, try not to just read it word for word, try and sort of go through these bullet points and expound on them. So Kyrie to the Mavs. So you could make a debate about who is the most dominant on the Nets team, if whether it be Kyrie or KD. Kyrie did not play that much compared to KD, and obviously a lot of people say it was KD, and I would agree. But there is an argument there for Kyrie. When KD was injured, Kyrie sort of stepped up, and obviously they complemented each other, even though they didn't play that many games together as one might have expected. Whenever they did play together, they were a huge threat and huge force. So when this trade first happened, it seemed that a lot of people were very excited about it, and I saw a lot of people, not inside the NBA, not the TNT guys, trying to remember who it was, but I saw the analyst on ESPN sort of talking about, this is an A-plus grade for the Mavs. This is a huge pickup to get Kyrie. This is a great move for the Mavs. And then as the week went on, it sort of started to shift, and the grade that people were giving it was drastically dropping. And all of a sudden it went from everybody giving this an A-plus grade to a B minus, and for me, I give it a B minus to a C plus. So it was really weird to see how everybody was so excited, everybody was going crazy about this trade, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, actually, so as people thought about it more, it started to get a little bit more shifty. But we'll go ahead and start out with the positive for the Mavericks first. So obviously getting Kyrie Irving does help them on offense. That's not even a question. Getting Kyrie, is a massive move, which is why I think a lot of people were giving it an A plus to begin with. Luka and Kyrie together. Luka has some weight that's taken off of his shoulders, makes things a lot easier for the Mavericks. And obviously, there isn't that much to say there. Their offense unquestionably increased. They now have two super efficient guards that can score, upwards of 30, 40. Kyrie and Luka both, have 60-point nights, and so it'll be interesting to see how they complement each other, and how this works out, and how their offensive system changes, and how the team plays, how the ball movement changes, and how their offense is structured now. But even with Luka not playing in Kyrie's first game, Kyrie still managed to score 24 points to win over the Lakers. As his age increases, he's still showing consistency in his play and his ability to execute. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we go to the Kyrie stats, I mean, it's basically exactly what I just said. A lot of players, we talked about LeBron's longevity. We talk about LeBron's longevity a lot, especially last episode with the whole GOAT debate. But if we look at Kyrie here, he pretty much stays like his career average is 23, and he pretty much stays above 23 for his entire career. And he even stays like within the last like 4 or 5 years, has stayed above 27 points. So he hasn't decreased his game at all. He didn't start out at like this 25 here and then start dropping to 24, 23, 22, and like so on. Instead, he saw a little bit of a decrease here after going to Boston, but then immediately increased again and has pretty much just stayed consistent so far with the 25 to 27 range. So even though Kyrie is getting older, he is still able to perform when he needs to and execute. It's not like you're trading for a super old bum that can't do anything. It's not like you're trading for like a 35-year-old player that you're immediately just gonna waive and dump for salary cap. You're gonna utilize Kyrie, and he is able to be utilized even at his age. And then on the notes here, I just have that bullet point I already said, that this adds more players to the team that can perform and obviously frees up the burden on Luka. So obviously this is a huge thing for the Mavericks because, people were talking about, is Luka going to get traded eventually? Because he's doing all these things for the Mavericks. He should be in MVP conversations, and the Mavericks still have not found him enough help, and he is getting frustrated. And, if he's putting in all this work and nothing's happening, then what's to stop him from getting lazier? What's to stop him from going to another team and putting in that same effort and becoming a championship team? And, what's to stop him of saying, I've done all I can to help you. You haven't done all you can to help me, and I'm out of here, type of thing. So, it was a huge issue with the Mavs that they do get somebody to help Luka. Otherwise, they could lose Luka as well. And if I've talked many times, if the Mavs lose Luka, they have nobody. They would be down there with the Detroit Pistons and the Houston Rockets, the San Antonio Spurs right now that have no all-stars, no superstars, and are just sort of coasting at the 11th to 13th seed. But This will also help Luka in terms of like longevity for Luka's sake as well. And what do I mean by that? Basically, I talked before how the Mavs could start having problems with injuries with Luka, and that's being shown now with Luka just coming back from injury because Luka was playing some of the most minutes out of any NBA player. I don't remember the exact number that I talked about, but it was something like Luka played like 58 minutes in like a 60-minute game or something like that. And it was just crazy. Like, he literally played like the entire game, like nonstop, like didn't go on the bench like at all. And then shortly afterwards, he gets injured. Your body needs to rest. And now with Kyrie, that will definitely help rotations a lot better, get Luka a little bit more rest, and not have Luka as injured. And even if Kyrie and Luka are in the starting five, that's a good unit. But at the same time, the bench for the Mavs has not been very deep, and there's nobody coming off the bench that even scores like 10 points a night. So now, again, if you have Luka in the starting five and have Kyrie sort of help the second squad, then that will definitely help get Luka some rest and also elevate your bench roster. And again, in my bullet points, I just talk about the whole Luka being unhappy in Dallas. And I quote CBS here, where they said that the reality is that Luka wanted help after losing Jalen Brunson in free agency. The Mavs had asked Doncic to carry an unsustainable offensive burden. His 38.5% usage rate is the fifth highest single season figure in NBA history. He has made his displeasure clear. They had to trade for Irving here and now. They might never have gotten another chance to land Doncic a partner. I always just call him Luka because for the life of me, I cannot pronounce his last name. But exactly what I just said, they had to get somebody to make Luka happy, and hopefully they have done that. However, with both of them being guards, it's debatable. We're gonna have to wait and see. I could bring up the Hawks and talk about DeJounte and Trae Young and how they still sort of haven't figured it out, and everybody thought they were gonna be a huge, crazy backcourt, and how they were going to be draining threes every night together and all that sort of stuff. So with that, we can go into the negatives of the Mavs for this trade. So again, one of the biggest problems with this trade is that they had to make it right here and now to make Luka happy. And if they did not, then they risk losing Luka. However, in doing so, they sort of made themselves apparently desperate. And so the other teams that are trying to give the Mavericks a superstar, in this case it being the Nets, are able to sort of have the upper hand and ask for a lot more. And sort of the Mavericks cards are shown, their hand is shown that they desperately need a trade to happen, and teams can continue asking for more and sort of blackmail in a way, and bribe in a way, being like, well, you could not take my trade, but in not taking my trade, you risk somebody else not wanting to make a trade with you, and then you lose Luka. This whole, again, Luka made his displeasure in Dallas very clear. He's talked many times about needing help. He was very clearly unhappy. Everybody knew that he was starting to get unhappy. Everybody knew that the Mavs were looking for help. And so it's just sort of like, hey, even if my person is only worth $10, like obviously they're worth more than $10, but to keep the numbers very simple, um, if my person is worth $10, but I know you desperately need my person, and you're gonna do almost anything you can to get him. Otherwise, you risk losing your person that's worth $20. I can, instead of asking for $10, ask for $15, $20, and if you start to say, my person isn't worth $15 or $20, I could say, yeah, but the person you have now is worth $20. And if you don't trade for my $10 person, you're going to lose your $20 person. And yeah, I think that pretty much speaks for itself without me talking in a circle, talking in a loop. The Mavericks were sort of had a problem of being way too open and way too obvious with what they're looking for and what they need. So in doing so, they traded away a key role player. They traded away a bunch of picks, and they now have no more assets if this Kyrie trade ends up going wrong. They have put all their eggs in one basket, which is why people are hesitant to give this trade a grade before anything is done. And why, like I talked about before, everybody was saying, A plus, and now they're sort of being a little bit more hesitant because the Mavericks sort of said all or nothing on this trade. And Kyrie has a number of controversies, which obviously I'm not going to get into all of those because they're controversial. But, Kyrie had problems on the Nets for not playing because of the COVID stuff. He had the whole suspended for his comments and just sort of stuff like that where the Nets were unhappy with him because they paid so much money for Kyrie and Kyrie wasn't playing that much. And there's also the huge problem, or with the not playing thing. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier of this is an all-in-one trade, and the Nets made the same problem with getting Kyrie. They traded so much to get Kyrie and KD, and look how much games Kyrie and KD played together and how well it worked out. And it's sort of the same thing with the Mavs. They're like, we're going all or nothing on Kyrie, like it's now or never. But in doing so, what if Kyrie only plays 30, 40 games a season, and he decides to do something that gets him suspended, or something like the vaccine comes up where Kyrie refuses to do it and he can't play. Obviously those are huge hypotheticals, but it's a question of how much value are we actually getting back. We could think we have a huge great player like Kyrie, but he could end up not doing what we need him to do, just like with the Nets. And there's also the problem with team loyalty. So he's already played on four different teams. He's been traded to 4 teams in the past 6 years, and each time he's been traded, he's basically said it was for the same reason and the same disdain and what's the word I'm looking for? Negativity. I can't think of the word, but he basically gave the same reason for not liking where he was at and not liking the team and the front office and things like that. And he very much disliked, or he claimed that he very much disliked the environment he was in on every team. He was sick of being the second option on every single team. He wanted to always be the first option. He felt like with his playing, he deserved to be the first option, except every time he was on a team, he always was next to a guy that was as good, if not better than him. With Cleveland, he left because he said he was sick of playing second fiddle to LeBron. And then in Boston, I can't think of anybody off of Boston right now, but I haven't looked at that roster in a little bit, so forgive me. But then he goes to what's it called? After Boston, he goes to the Nets. At the Nets, he's playing with Harden and then playing with KD, and it's the same sort of thing. I don't want to be second place behind KD, and he also said the same exact thing that he said in Boston and Cleveland as well, where he promised Cleveland and Boston that he would stay, and he did not, which is why I actually predicted a while back that he would not re-sign with the Nets, and a bunch of people seem to disagree and say that he would stay with the Nets, and I said let's wait and see what happens, and now he is traded. So luckily, I can say that I sort of landed that prediction pretty well because of things he's said in the past, things he's done in the past compared to now and the present. But again, that goes back to our original point of he's been traded to 4 different teams, and with all the 4 teams that he has played for, he has been sick of being the second option. And now he's playing with Luka, and even though he is a great player, Luka is the Mavs franchise player. Again, you were trading to save Luka in a way. And so he is once again going to be the second option, and we'll have to see how that plays out. And even after trading for him, Kyrie is still a free agent after this season and can leave the Mavs if he wanted to. So there's a big question of how do we make both Kyrie and Luka happy, and how do we let Kyrie, in his mind at least, feel respected enough and feel that he's being utilized enough with his skills to not be unhappy and feel that he's being pushed to the side, even if in reality he is being pushed to the side because that's what the team needs and everything like that. So with that being said, that sort of summarizes the whole loyalty issue of, again, we put the Mavericks put all their eggs in one basket, and it could turn out that by next year Kyrie's already gone again. And then at that point they would again be left with Luka, but with no assets to trade, and then also Luka once again losing another big help, and then Luka possibly leaving after that, saying like, y'all had Kyrie, and then y'all managed to lose him, and yeah. So there's also the problem with matchups. While they increased their offense with Kyrie, their defense took a massive hit. They already had a problem with Jokic and other big men in their conference, and by trading Finney Smith, they have even less insurance on the tall end of the floor. Kyrie has also been known to be a defensive liability, so we'll have to see how many points he lets get through when he's on defense. So, kind of speaks for itself there. Whenever you think of the Mavericks, what are the first things that you think of? You think of Luka, and you think of maybe Christian Wood now. And even if Christian Wood is a decent player, he's not a crazy elite big, and he's not going to be able to defend Jokic or defend these huge big man teams like Giannis and Embiid and everyone like that. And now by trading away Finney Smith, they have even less insurance on that end of the floor, meaning that Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, and these big men teams are going to be able to come through a lot easier. And when the Mavs play the Suns, we could see the Suns utilizing Ayton a lot more. We could see them utilize KD for that exact reason. And then Kyrie as well also has been known to be very poorly on defense. We talked about when he was on the Nets with KD, the Nets had some of the worst defensive ratings in the league, and they had very, very, very bad defense, and sort of just let all of the points come through, and they made up for that by just outscoring it everybody. Ooh, I apologize for that. That was loud. For some reason, I always seem to have at least one alarm go off every podcast episode, but basically, what was I saying? I apologize. The Nets' strategy was we can let them score 30 as long as we score 40, and that was always the plan. So, and now with Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton, the Nets are working a lot more on their defense, which is good, and working on that weakness. So, again, we'll just have to see how their offense compares to their defense. Both Luka and Kyrie are on-ball dominant point guards. This is the obvious problem that everybody's going to bring up. As soon as Kyrie got traded, I saw a bunch of memes talking about, who takes the last shot between the two. If both of them are on the floor, they will need to find balance. This is one reason I said the DeJounte trade would not work out, because they have the exact same problem and have not found balance yet. And this is a wait and see type of trade to see, do they balance each other or do they not balance each other? And I have a quote here, but I'm going to have to look it up real quick to try and find the article, because I posted it without... I put the quote in there without the actual link to say who it was from. Okay, so it is from The Ringer, and they say, there are people who will look at this trade and think, wow, Dallas now has 2 all-star starters. Are they a super team? These people are very confused. Irving's production does not align with his aesthetic. He's made only 3 All-NBA teams in his career and has not gotten out of the second round since 2017. This was a long time ago. He's now a couple months from his 31st birthday and reportedly demanding a 4-year contract that no rational person would think is a good idea. So, again, sort of summarizes a lot of takes that I talked about, that people originally thought, Kyrie and Luka, this is going to be crazy. However, he's a defensive liability. He's getting a bit older, although I don't give the age that much credence whenever, I don't give the age argument that much attention or anything like that in regards to why Kyrie may be a bad trade, because, again, we established at the beginning that he's able to still perform at that level. But, again, this is a wait and see type trade, see how it turns out, and it really depends on if Kyrie is willing to stay, if Kyrie is able to perform to the way that they hope he can, how Kyrie and Luka feel about each other, how they balance the ball, if Kyrie feels that he isn't being utilized enough, and so on. So with the Mavericks, I give it a B- or C+ to B-. So we've already spent 30 minutes in the podcast, and we only got through the Mavs side of the Kyrie trade. But again, this is probably the biggest trade, tied with the KD Suns trade, that happened during this trade deadline. So now we can talk about the Nets side of the Mavericks trade. So for this, whenever I was grading these, I want to completely ignore all the sort of subsequent trades. So when grading the Kyrie Mavs trade, I will only be talking about Kyrie and the Mavs, and not the KD trade that resulted from the Kyrie trade, if that makes sense. However, I will touch on the Kyrie trade later with the KD trade. So it's kind of hard to explain. It's sort of like how the puzzle pieces go together. and the order that they went into. So, if two came after one, I can't grade one without or I can't grade one with two because the two trade hasn't happened yet. However, whenever I grade the two trade, I can grade it with two and one because the second trade came after, and sort of was uh, the result of one and everything like that. So sort of talking about the cause and effect of things after the effect has already happened. The effect of the cause, when the cause happens, the effect is unknown until it happens. Even if you have a good idea, anything can happen. But afterwards, you can sort of look back and be like, okay, was this a good choice and everything like that, if that makes sense. So, but the Nets traded a lot away to get Kyrie and KD. They traded away 7 picks to get both of them on the same team, as well as Harden. And obviously now the Nets have blown it up. So this wouldn't have been a problem if they gave away as much as they did, if they were to keep all of these players. Except obviously now they are gone and they have to basically reconstruct a team and see what they're able to do with the remaining pieces that they have. Now that they don't have any picks to make the draft happen, they'll have to go back to work with what they have and return to mediocrity. Kyrie and KD obviously would have made up a lot of market share in terms of jersey sales and merchandise and ticket sales to see the duo together, even if they were not on the floor together often. So in terms of money and marketability of the Nets themselves, because remember, each team is its own business. This was a huge hit for them in terms of just the business side of things alone. Because, again, now nobody's going to be able to spend a huge amount of money getting a Kevin Durant Brooklyn jersey. So all of their picks now belong to Houston as well, meaning that they can't pull a Spurs, they can't pull a Charlotte Hornets. Who are some other teams tanking? But they can't just tank and try and get a really good draft pick, because if they tank and they get like the first pick or something, it's just going to immediately go to Houston anyway. So again, they have to do the best with what they have, and that means that they'll probably drop down to sort of a 9th or 10th seed of a play-in, because they're pretty high right now. But again, they don't have any of the players that they used to have, and they'll probably have about like a 500 win percentage. However, the Nets practically had no choice. Kyrie said he was wanting to get traded and he was going to walk away one way or the other, and the Mavs sort of had to in a way, like get the best that they were going to get. And this sort of goes back to the opposite of what I was talking about with the Mavs. The Mavs showed their hand of like, we desperately need this. We desperately need a person to come to us, and everything like that. But the Nets, it was the opposite of, this person is leaving. We need to do the best that we can to replace him. And so, while the Mavs, you can sort of bump up the asking price out of desperate to add, the Nets would have to also desperately ask to bump up the selling price in order to make up for what they're losing. So they knew that they were probably losing KD if they lost Kyrie as well, so they would need to fill 2 roles in one trade. They got Finney Smith, who can space the floor and be a good power forward, playing as a 3-and-D, as well as getting a decent point guard that already has history with their team in Dinwiddie. While they aren't anywhere near the level of KD and Kyrie, they filled the roles they knew that would be empty by the departure of the previous 2. This isn't the optimal outcome. However, the optimal outcome would obviously be impossible of keeping both KD and Kyrie. all things considered, the Nets played their cards well to try and come out on top of the trade. So for the Nets, I give them a B plus because again, Kyrie and KD were going to leave either way, and they needed to do the best that they could. And all things considered, this is a pretty good trade for them. They got Finney-Smith, who again is a pretty decent big. They got Dinwiddie, who's also a pretty decent guard. They got a few picks back later on to sort of fill up the picks that they lost from Kyrie and KD. And they sort of averaged them. They've rather than completely dropping down to the bottom, they've sort of managed to stay average after the end of this trade and become a 9th or 10th seed. So all right, now we can get into the Russell Westbrook trade. So everybody has been giving the Jazz an A or B rating for this, and I've seen very high ratings for the Jazz getting Russell Westbrook. However, I really don't think that it should be that high, especially because a lot of people are forgetting that Russ has had a lot to say about the Jazz. I saw a meme earlier today about it where it was from EPSN, which obviously is a troll account to try and get people to, it looks all official to try and get people to believe certain things. And it was talking about, Russell Westbrook retired after 15 seasons, showing disinterest in playing in Utah. And, that very well could end up being a real thing and end up being real sometime in the near future. I don't think Russ would retire this season, obviously, because he has a few more seasons he can play, but at the same time, I don't think he's going to be with Utah for very long. He has a large disdain for the Utah Jazz, Utah in general, and all of the fans. This is definitely going to cause some turmoil or drama that happens for the Jazz if they decide on what to do, if they decide to keep him or what they decide to do when his contract expires or if they decide to waive him. So Russell Westbrook is a great player, but at the same time, if they do play Russ, this creates a similar issue that the Lakers had with spacing. It was hard to have Braun, AD, and Russ all on the floor at the same time as they all utilize the paint and mid-range and crowd themselves inside the arc. While the Jazz have some noteworthy guards on the team like Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton, the majority of the team is comprised of forwards and centers like Rudy Gay, Larry Markkinen, and more. So again, this would just cause the same issues that the Lakers had with spacing of, we have so many big men on the floor right now, or Russell Westbrook isn't a big, but he sort of plays like one where he tries to go through the paint and he tries to be dominant inside of the paint and everything like that. So, however, there are many talks, like I just said, about Westbrook being waived or bought out, even with how big of a name he is, so maybe this doesn't even matter. What matters more is the Jazz getting picks. Sporting News says, quote, with the incoming pick from the Lakers, they have 15 first-round picks over the course of the next 7 drafts and will be able to make up to $60 million in cap space, end quote. So again, they're not really worried about getting Russ. They're worried about getting picks. They're worried about building their cap space and so on. So they're probably just going to get rid of Russell Westbrook anyway. So, however, in getting these picks, they had to give up 3 players to get it. They now rival OKC with the amount of picks that they have, which obviously says a lot with, how many memes OKC has about how many picks they have. And, even the NBA talks about it every time a trade or a draft starts getting closer is, OKC has nearly 30 picks in the next 10 years, something like that. So the Jazz are starting to sort of get like that as well, where they're just building up picks to just completely recreate their entire roster. So then we can talk about the Lakers side of the trade. So the Lakers have been wanting to get rid of Russell Westbrook for a while. The instant he was traded to the Lakers, fans and analysts were sounding the alarm for spacing issues which never got resolved in the entire time he was there. So again, talked about the spacing issue and how the Utah Jazz could have the same space issue. Russell Westbrook just does not shoot from beyond the arc. He doesn't really take that many point guard level shots. He likes to stay in the mid range, stay inside the arc a lot. And with AD and LeBron, they had very similar shot selection, and so it did not work out. And even I, being a college kid that just watches the games and tries to formulate my thoughts the best that I can, even I was pointed out like, hey, this is going to be a spacing problem. And I'm not an NBA analyst. I'm not a GM. Like how the GM didn't see the spacing problem coming, I don't know. But there's there's plenty of memes about him missing shots on the Lakers as well. The Lakers get a good shooter and defender in Vanderbilt and Beasley. However, they needed a player that was both. And sort of what do I mean by this? Well, they needed a three-point shooter and they needed a good defender. So they got a good defender and they got a good shooter. But what they needed was somebody that was good on both ends, because you're going to have to fill more spots on the floor if you divide it up. You can only have 5 people on the floor. So if you have one person that can do both things, it's better than having to have 2 people on the floor to make up for 2 of your weaknesses, because then now you only have 3 players left that you can choose from to put on the floor. So this is especially important when remembering they gave up a deal with the Pacers before for Miles Turner and Hield. And the bigger problem is what many people have addressed in their similarities. The Lakers are known for being a big market and success. Sorry. I stumbled over my words a little bit there. The bigger problem is when many people have what many people have addressed in their summaries of the trade, which is the Lakers are sort of trying to become the Lakers again. And what I mean by that is that the Lakers are a very big market and successful team, or at least they used to be. The Lakers is one of the biggest markets in the NBA, and they were constantly in contention, conversation, constantly winning, and now they've been at the bottom of the bracket for the past 2 seasons. So with players like LeBron and AD, especially on their team, there's a bit of a higher expectation to win for the Lakers. However, this trade sort of raises the floor, but it does not raise the ceiling of the Lakers. And with them being the Lakers and then having sort of a winning culture over in LA, raising the ceiling more than raising the floor is sort of what it's expected. So while it is a good deal to raise their floor, it's not what's expected from the fans. It's not what is expected from the market and everything like that. So while it is a good move, many people could not see it as a good move just based on the stereotype of the Lakers and everything like that. So, but this also frees up cap space if they don't re-sign these players that they traded for, and they bring in a younger superstar when Bron and AD get older and leave. They have that cap space that they can work with then. And now they don't have any picks for whenever they lose both Bron and AD. So that's pretty much the summary, or that's the Lakers side of it summed up. So now we can get into the Timberwolves side of it, because this was a 3-team trade. So the Timberwolves side of the trade is one of the most controversial, and what I mean by that is I've seen both like crazy opposite sides of the spectrum for the Timberwolves side of this trade. I've seen grades for this trade range all the way from A- to complete Fs, and it's very weird seeing opinions so split on the Timberwolves side, at least, of this trade. So they ended up getting Connolly for Russell. Many have said this is about as even as it gets. It's sort of a one-for-one trade in terms of their play styles. Their floors, their ceilings, and their averages are about the same. However, or I meant to say their floors and averages are about the same, but their ceilings are different. With the fact that Connolly is about a decade older. However, in this system, he fits well already with having experience with Rudy Gobert and also playing off ball, allowing more offense through Anthony Edwards. Just like how the Magic have a lot of off ball players to complement Banchero. We talked about how Banchero is a good pick for the Magic because they have so many off ball players, and now they just need that on ball player that will be able to utilize everybody and make the system work. And now they have Banchero, which can do that. And the Timberwolves are sort of the same thing right now, where Anthony Edwards is a huge on-ball person, so they need more off-ball people, and they're getting that with Connolly. However, contrasting to Connolly and Gobert's chemistry, so again, we just mentioned, Connolly and Rudy Gobert sort of already have that experience with each other. It's a built-in team chemistry that they're already getting from the trade. However, there's also D'Angelo Russell and Cat's team chemistry as well. Cat was huge friends with D'Lo, so we'll see how this affects future feelings towards the organization. There's a large chance that Connolly does not stay with the Wolves because of his age and upcoming contracts, and the Wolves have essentially just traded for a much older player. And also they need to conserve their money for the stuff that's coming up. So the Wolves basically, they wouldn't be in that position if it wasn't for the Rudy Gobert trade. And what I mean by that is they are paying Rudy Gobert a large amount of money. They gave away a large amount of picks for Rudy Gobert. And now Rudy Gobert is getting paid a lot. And Karl Anthony is coming up. Karl Anthony Towns is getting paid a lot of money as well. But in the near future looms this huge problem that the Timberwolves are going to have to deal with, which is Anthony Edwards. And we were just talking about playing through Anthony Edwards a lot more, but he is up for a big extension as well soon. So they will have to somehow have that money come from somewhere, and that could mean by waiving Connolly. That could mean getting rid of Connolly again, and everything sort of surrounding that is going to be important for Anthony Edwards' contract coming up. So if Gobert did not make as much money on his contract, his trade could have been better. But instead, they didn't move up. And to summarize on here on my notes, instead, they did not move up in this trade. And at best, they moved sideways with getting a player that is about the same level as the one they traded for. As the one they traded away. But the one they traded for is in much higher age and one that may not be re-signed in order to save money on Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. So with the Timberwolves, I gave them a C+ because again, it's sort of average. But there are a lot of negatives to it, so it's sort of in the C- to C+ range. The Lakers, again, C+ because it does raise the floor, but it does not raise the ceiling, which is what the Lakers need. And again, the Lakers did have sort of a high ceiling for a while, I guess theoretically, because everybody was talking about the amount of players that the Lakers have been getting and their crazy starting five, but they weren't able to do anything with it, so that's why they're raising their floor a little bit, because they did have all these great players and a great ceiling, and everybody thought they were going to be crazy with all of these notable superstar and all-star names, and then nothing ever happened with it. And so that's why they're increasing their floor a bit more, so it's going to be a C+. With the Jazz, I gave them a solid B. It wasn't enough for me to make it a B+. However, it wasn't bad enough for me to give it a B-. So it was simply straight in the middle with a solid B. So now to the next biggest trade, We've already been going for almost an hour here, but Kevin Durant to the Suns. So, rather than starting off with the Suns first, I actually want to start off with the Nets first. So they knew that most likely by trading Kyrie, they would probably have to trade KD eventually too. Just like with the Kyrie trade, it isn't optimal where they're sitting, but they did what they had to do. And if we look at this trade from a glance, you can give them even a B or a B plus, even if you just briefly look at the trade and evaluate it. So the biggest problem with the Nets is right now with what they traded for, they need to sort of pick a direction. Do they utilize what they've already have from the trades with Finney-Smith, Dinwiddie, and now getting Mikal Bridges? Or do they want to fully blow it up and get all of their picks back that they lost before? As I said with Kyrie, they gave away a lot to make this team work, and they were essentially left with no picks. And even with the KD trade, they weren't able to break even with their picks, but they were able to get a lot back to sort of make up for it. So they gave away 7 picks initially to get Kyrie and KD, and with the KD trade, they get back 4 picks. So again, that's better than just having no picks at all. However, to put this in context and sort of compare things, Rudy Gobert's trade was also only worth 4 picks, and I don't think there's anybody that would argue, unless you're a huge Gobert stan, that KD is not better than Rudy Gobert. However, the Nets also got three players in this, which obviously does put it over the Gobert trade. So the Nets did decide to keep Mikal Bridges rather than trading him away to get even more picks. You know, there was that huge thing of like, Mikal, we'll give you 3 or 4 even more picks if you give us Mikal Bridges. And then they would have broken even on their trades that they got for KD and Kyrie, again, with getting 7 or having a total of 7 or 8 picks now. But they didn't do that, which was a little weird. So that's why I said they need to really pick a direction. So I put on here, a lot of people threw eyebrows at this, and again, it's just a question of if they want to use Mikal Bridges or if they wanted to go for the full rebuild. Mikal Bridges adds nice shooting and defense, and Johnson adds a nice big to also complement. By getting picks back, especially with the addition to the Crowder trade that we'll talk about later, they can draft some new talent in that they need, or convert it again, or convert the picks again for KD, somebody like KD and Kyrie in the first place, and get another big name. Like the Kyrie trade, I said that they knew that they were going to have to fill some roles left behind by KD and Kyrie, and they did that really well. They're getting a guard and a forward back, even if they aren't obviously the same ceiling as KD and Kyrie. With the amount of decent role players the Nets now have, they now have a deep bench that gives them a decent floor to work off of. So, obviously, they're not going to be as good as KD and Kyrie, but they are able to sort of make up for a lot of what they've lost. So, with the Suns side of things, everybody has been giving the Suns obviously an A+ because of the Suns getting KD. You know, they're saying, you know, this is the greatest thing that could happen to the Suns, everything like that. However, I do think an A+ is way too generous because, you know, an A+ is an A+, you know. A+ trades to me are completely one-sided, meaning that if you were to have to give an A+, you would have to give the other team like a D or an F, which I'm not going to give the Nets a D or an F on this trade. So therefore, I don't think the Suns are worthy of an A+ because it's not completely one-sided. But at first glance, yes, the Suns got KD, and there isn't much to say about that. They have KD. You know, this is a player that's been in MVP arguments for several years. This is a player that, just like Kyrie, you know, can score 30, 40, 50 points a night. And to add him to the Suns is a crazy addition because they now have this immense starting five that they can sort of build on. However, my biggest problem with that is that they don't have anybody on their bench now. They have this crazy starting five, especially because they didn't give up Ayton, and so now they have Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Ayton, KD, and I forget the fifth, but they have this crazy big starting five, but whenever they play their bench, they're going to be basically mediocre because they don't have any huge notable names on their bench because they've essentially traded away all of their bench to get this starting five that they now have. So whenever rotations need to be made, and CP3, Devin Booker, KD, they all need to rest. The other team could very easily go on a crazy run to make up for some of the point deficits. Even if say the Suns with Booker, KD, and Ayton on the floor are like 20 points ahead. You sub all those people out, and you only have the Suns bench, then the other team can go on, a 14-4 run or something like that, and make up, that 10 point, at least 10 points of that 20-point deficit, very easily. So, without question, again, the Suns have increased their ceiling, but in doing so, they lowered their floor, which is basically what I was talking about with the whole bench thing. Many also say this is a championship team. However, I've had this debate with many people after the trade happening, with CP3 getting older, Booker having injuries, and the West being flooded with other trades that obviously we're going to discuss more. The Suns' greatest opportunity, to me, has already happened when they played the Bucks, and I don't know if they're ever going to make it to the finals again with this team because of the problem with their bench. I could very easily this season see it being the Suns and the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. But if the Nuggets and Suns play to each other, I don't really have confidence in either team to make it to the finals. And then whoever does end up making it to the finals, I think will definitely lose in 5 or 6 games to whoever they play, because I don't have confidence in either one to even make it to the finals. So with that being said, I give the Nets a B-, and then I put a note here that it could have been a B+ if they did more to trade Mikal Bridges or somebody else for picks and sort of made their direction more apparent of what they're trying to do. And then with the Suns, I give them an A- because, again, I feel like an A+ is way too much, but they obviously did make a massive trade. And they also did lose a lot of their bench as well. So it's a B+ to A- for me with the Suns. So now we can talk about some of the bigger trades, but also not as big as Kyrie and KD. So I have a lot of ones written down here, as you can see, but we've already been going for almost an hour. So I'm going to try and keep these actually a little bit shorter. So as you can see, this is where we just ended with the Nets Suns, and I literally go through every single trade. Poeltl to Raptors, Saddiq Bey traded, Wisemen traded, Mo Bamba, and then I have some other ones here about, Eric Gordon, Thibault, DeVonte Graham, and so on. So I still do want to talk about each trade as much as I can, but I'm going to try and keep it a lot shorter, just so that this episode isn't, massively long. So with Poeltl to the Raptors, I've been saying trade Poeltl for a while now. As a Spurs fan, I think we got exactly what we wanted back. We're obviously in a tanking mode right now. We need picks, and so while most people give this trade, a B- or a B, I give it a B+ or an A-. It could have been a higher A if we got more first rounds rather than second picks. But again, we're in tank mode. We needed picks, so getting 3 picks back is pretty good for us. And the Raptors as well also got what they needed, so it makes it's a really good trade for both teams. and mutually beneficial, where they desperately needed a center, and they got someone. They got a center that already has experience with the Raptors, and that's really all can be said for this trade. That it was really beneficial for both sides, and so both teams got what they need / wanted, and so I give it an A- for both sides. So with Jae Crowder to the Bucks for the Nets, this goes back to what I said with the KD trade, that they were able to flip Crowder really well to get more picks, which will help them. Whether they trade those picks again for a bigger name or they decide to rebuild them a little, both outcomes see positive for these picks, so it gives them a little bit of flexibility. The rest of the trades that they made fills the Nets with younger players that could stay for a little while, so giving away the nearly acquired Crowder was a no-brainer for these picks, because again, the picks add flexibility, and also Crowder was a bit of an older player, so by getting rid of Crowder again, they keep the average age of the team to a much lower average. So the Nets did pretty well on that side of the trade. And then at first glance, it also seems that the Bucks gave away too much for Jae Crowder, because again, Jae Crowder is a bit of an older player. But at the same time, the only thing they gave away was picks. And whenever you look at where the Bucks are at right now, they don't really need these picks. So it was much better than trading, player for player. And we basically weren't going to use these picks to begin with. These picks are practically useless to the Bucks, because they just won a championship in 2021. And last season, they took the Boston Celtics to 7 games, who ended up going to the finals, even with an injured Middleton. So they don't need to worry about the age of their roster, or worry about the draft, or worry about their future or anything like that. They are still very much in a let's get a championship type mode, which is why they don't need these picks as much. So all they really needed to do was find their weaknesses and sort of fine tune them and adjust themselves to be a championship team again with their weaknesses, and that's exactly what they did with the addition of Jae Crowder. So the Bucks now have another big that can be great in a bench unit when Giannis or Portis need rest or are injured, and can raise the floor of the Bucks when the team isn't 100% with injuries or fatigue. The Bucks also managed to get rid of George Hill, who was causing problems in rotation as well. So again, the Bucks' ceiling has already been established. The Bucks' ceiling is championship team. We don't need anything to really raise our ceiling as a championship team. However, what happens when we're injured like we were last season? So we need to sort of create insurance for the Bucks, and raise our floor a little bit, so that we are guaranteed a lot more things. And so that is what they did. So the Bucks get an A-, and the Nets get a B+. So I was talking before, or I wrote down here everything about Gary Payton. However, a couple hours before I recorded this, there was reports that Gary Payton II failed his physical, and so the trade may not happen, or the Warriors are going to be stuck with an injured Payton that is on the bench a lot. So that definitely affects the grade of this trade. But I want to talk about everything I said before the whole Gary Payton stuff came out. So I put Gary Payton II already had experience with the Warriors and was able to perform for them when he was there. Wisemen, on the other hand, was always seen as a work in progress with a high ceiling. It seems the Pistons were willing to take that gamble on molding Wisemen, while the Warriors gave up. The Warriors in turn got a lot of picks, but again, with this being the Warriors, they weren't needing the picks. It's sort of the same thing I was just talking about with the Bucks, where the Warriors are always in contention. They're always talked about as contenders for years, because they simply are the Warriors. So they weren't really too worried about giving up those picks, and they're more in let's win more championships while we still have Steph and Clay with us. However, in getting Wiseman and the gamble, the Pistons also gave up Saddiq Bey. Giving up Saddiq Bey can go either way, as he was one of the Pistons' better players. However, it opens up an opportunity for Marvin Bagley III, who I made a video on, and how he complements Cade Cunningham, and the duo can propel the Pistons when they get more minutes together. However, the Pistons still have Jalen Duren, which they needed to develop, and now Wisemen, who will also take away minutes from Marvin Bagley III. So the whole minutes argument that I just said about, with Saddiq Bey gone, Marvin Bagley can get more minutes, it doesn't really matter because, now you have two bigs that you need to develop as well. So with Jalen Duren being a draft pick with Cade Cunningham, the Pistons now have two bigs with essentially identical positions they need to somehow develop at the same time. So again, that's going to take a lot to sort of develop them side by side with each other. So the Blazers got 5 picks, which definitely helps the future when Dame inevitably has to leave or retire with age. However, they lose more help for Dame with the time that Dame does have with the Blazers. But at the same time, this is the Portland Trail Blazers, so when have they ever tried to get that much help for Dame? The Hawks were able to get Saddiq Bey, which helps their offense. However, Saddiq Bey won't be able to execute on offense if the Hawks still can't figure out who gets the ball between their guards to facilitate it to Saddiq Bey in the first place. So that's everything I wrote before the whole physical stuff. Now that Payton has failed his physical, it obviously makes this a way worse trade for the Warriors, where Wiseman, again, had a very high ceiling, but he needed to be developed, and they traded for Payton to be like a win now scenario. But now they're essentially getting nobody for Wiseman that could have had a high ceiling, and they can't do anything with Gary Payton, so they almost essentially traded for nothing. So before, I had said the Blazers are B-, the Pistons are C+ to B-, the Warriors are C+, and the Hawks are a B. But now the Warriors, they would move from a C+ more to a D or even an F because they don't have that player that they were trying to have. So, but. Next of the bigger trades, we have Mo Bamba and Patrick Beverley, and then after that, there's a lot smaller trades. So this should be really quick and wrap up pretty nicely. So it should be no surprise that Mo Bamba was on the move with the increased use of Wendell Carter Jr. and other bigs on the Magic. However, the Magic did not get nearly enough value for Mo Bamba, which is why I have such a big problem with this trade. While they did get a pick that can help in creating the young core that the Magic have been building over the last couple years, Mo Bamba also brings in a large amount of cash for the Magic, considering his off-court popularity, the whole Mo Bamba song and everything like that, meaning that Mo Bamba's jersey most likely made up a large amount of their jersey sales. Meaning like last trade deadline, meaning that the Magic, just like last trade deadline, probably would have been a good idea if they were to get cash considerations included along with this trade. So again, going back to the whole thing I said about the Nets and KD, you got to think about jersey sales and things like that, and that each team is a business. So I feel like they should have gotten cash considerations as well. So Patrick Beverley as a player does not nearly make up for the on-court play for Mo Bamba. It is a one player for one player trade. However, Pat Bev and Mo Bamba are very distinctly different. So for the Lakers, it seems questionable that they would trade Westbrook due to spacing issues. However, they create the same spacing issues by getting Mo Bamba in a big. However, Mo Bamba will not be in the starting lineup like Russ to cause the problems that Russ did. So Mo Bamba serves the Lakers by adding depth to the bench and raising the floor, especially when AD is injury prone. So for the Lakers, I give this a B, and for the Magic, I give this a D. It's not enough for the Lakers to make this, an A trade, but it is a decent B trade to sort of deepen their bench. And then for the Magic, they did not ask nearly enough for Mo Bamba in return. So the Magic, in my opinion, made a really bad trade with that one. But I'm sure JX Remy, who's a Magic fan, has his own take on that. So maybe in the future we'll get him to talk about it. But so now on to the smaller trades, which are like super quick, and then we can go ahead and end the episode. So John Wall and the Rockets. John Wall will 90% get waived, because why would you trade for John Wall back on the Rockets when John Wall has talked shit about the Rockets, doesn't want to play there, sat on the bench, So this creates cap space for Houston, as well as they get a first-round pick to compete in the draft with the other seeded teams, especially after getting the picks from the Nets. Eric Gordon gives the Clippers a good player with Kawhi and Paul George not putting up crazy numbers right now. And Memphis gets a shooter to their bench, where they've been needing more players to come off the bench. And that about summarizes the entire trade. So Houston B, Clippers B-, Memphis B+. Thibault to the Blazers. The Hornets needed more for McDaniels if they're going to build around LaMelo. It seems that they're in tank mode like the rest of the lower teams, and they were trying to get a lot of draft capital. With the 76ers getting McDaniels, they add depth to their bench when Embiid is not on the floor. But losing an excellent defender and offensive role player that helps alongside the rest of the starting five. The Blazers' biggest weakness, aside from having no one besides Dame, was the fact that they were 26th in defensive rating. So the defense that the 76ers are getting up is defense that the Blazers are getting in Thibault. And so the Blazers are able to hopefully raise their defensive rating a little bit, and maybe that might help them. So the Blazers get a B, the 76ers get a B-, and the Hornets get a C. With DeVonte Graham to the Spurs, at first glance, while it does give us draft insurance, at first glance, I would have liked to keep Josh Richardson based on the stats, and because Josh Richardson had double-digit points a game and a higher three-point percentage. However, DeVonte has had significantly less minutes with the Pelicans, which is why his stats have dropped so much over the past couple of years. We also did get draft insurance as well. So if the Spurs are able to use the Hornets version of DeVonte, then they're in business. So the Pelicans get a B- because, the trade doesn't really affect them that much, since they haven't been playing DeVonte, and DeVonte and Josh Richardson have pretty similar numbers. But the Spurs get a B+ because they're going to be able to use DeVonte a lot more than the Pelicans, and they also got the draft capital. So last one on here, Cam Reddish moving as well. There isn't much to say on this trade, which is why it's in the smaller trade section. The Blazers get a pick, which they need when Damian Lillard leaves, like I was talking about before. And the Knicks upgrade their backcourt slightly with Josh Hart. And it's about as average a trade as it gets for both teams, which is why they both get solid Bs on either side. So I did not expect that this episode would go as long as it did. I was expecting it to honestly be either a perfect hour or 55 minutes, something like that. But we've been going for an hour and 15. So thank you all that stuck around to the very end with this, and I hope you agree with my trade grades. If you did not, let me know why, and we can sort of have a discussion in the comments, all that good stuff. But with that being said, I think that's just about everything for this episode, and we'll talk about All-Star stuff and all that good stuff in upcoming episodes. Once again, we're very close to 500 subs, so if you have not already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, share the videos around, all that good stuff, and really help grow the channel. These episodes are available on Spotify. If you're watching or if you're listening on Spotify already, they're available on YouTube, as well as go check out my YouTube again, because we're close to 500 subs, and I post a lot of other stuff besides just the podcast on my YouTube, as well as like breaking stuff down. I talked about what the very first game of basketball was like, that sort of stuff, and I think that's about it. So I will see you all in the next one, and I hope you all have a lovely day. So Nathan Butnett, episode 41.